Is this the best you can do?" The words, heavy with a German accent and laced with condescension, cut through the air, echoing over the concrete and neatly trimmed grass of the Fort Bragg long-distance firing range. Klaus, young, confident, and every bit as arrogant as his reputation suggested, flashed a smug grin at his partner, RTOR. Both were members of the visiting German KSK sniper unit, participating in a joint training exercise. But instead of paper targets or steel plates, their aim was fixed on something far more unsettling: an old man. Dennis Randall, 82, sat on a plain wooden stool, spine straight, breathing steady. He didn't seem to notice the taunts. His focus was on the rifle across his lap, an antique beside the matte black polymer and carbon fiber rifles flanking him. It was a bolt action, its wooden stock smoothed dark in places by long-ago hands, its blued steel muted to a soft gray. "Look at that relic," Richter said loud enough for the off-duty soldiers and range staff to hear. "It belongs in a museum, not on the 1,000-meter line." "Maybe with him." Dennis rubbed a cloth, worn thin with age, along the barrel. His hands were wrinkled and veined, but steady, moving with a slow, deliberate economy that suggested not frailty, but deep, unhurried patience. Lieutenant Hayes, the range officer, shifted uneasily between placating his high-profile visitors and protecting the quiet dignity of the regular who came every Tuesday. "Fired 5 rounds, cleaned his rifle, and left. Gentlemen, maintain professional decorum," Hayes said, but his tone lacked force. The German marksmen, celebrated in their own right, sneered. Klaus stepped closer and peered down at Dennis. "Old man, need help? Maybe your eyes aren't so good. This is a serious range for serious soldiers," he said, gesturing to his expensive rifle. "A tool of precision." "What you've got is a piece of firewood." Dennis finally looked up. His eyes were a pale, washed blue, but unnervingly clear, not angry, not offended, simply observant, cataloging the young sniper's posture, his costly watch, the casual cruelty in his smile. He said nothing. The silence irritated Klaus more than any retort could have. He felt compelled to dominate. "I'll make a wager," he announced to the onlookers. "I'll hit the hostage-taker at 100 meters, a headshot through the eye. If I do it, the old man packs up and never returns. If I miss," he scoffed, "I will not miss." RTOR smirked and added, flicking toward Dennis's rifle, "And if he can even hit the steel plate from that distance with that thing, we'll clean every weapon on this line." The challenge hung in the air, the crowd murmured. It was an obvious setup, public humiliation. The hostage-taker target was a reactive plate, the head of the silhouette barely the size of an orange at that distance, the kind of shot only a world-class sniper with a modern rifle and a spotter could reasonably make. For an old man with an antique firearm and no spotter, it was absurd. Hayes looked to Dennis with a mix of pity and impatience. "Sir, maybe it's best if you call it a day. These gentlemen are our guests." Dennis methodically finished wiping his rifle, laid the cloth aside, and made no move to pack up. The Germans exchanged triumphant looks, confident they'd won. But Dennis didn't leave. He removed a single cartridge from a small, worn leather pouch. The brass was tarnished. He chambered it, the bolt's click ringing in the taut quiet, and met Lieutenant Hayes's gaze. His pale eyes held the young officer. "I've been waiting for the wind to settle," Dennis said in a low, gravelly rasp. It was the first time he'd spoken. The casual confidence in his tone changed the mood. It wasn't braggadocio, just a plain statement of fact, like a farmer noting the weather. Klaus's smirk faltered. He'd expected fear or embarrassment, not readiness. "Wind?" Victor scoffed, regaining composure. "What do you know of the wind, old man? My Kestrel gives me a precise reading, a 1.2 mil hold for windage, 8.8 minutes for elevation. Do you even know what that means?" Dennis didn't answer. He ran his thumb over the stock, over a set of initials roughly carved into the wood, LTB. The pressure from Klaus and RTOR grew. They read his stillness as timidity rather than patience. "So you won't shoot? Afraid of being shown up?" Klaus's voice rose. "This is for warriors, not grandfathers." He turned to the gathered soldiers. "In my country, we respect elders, but they must know their place. His place is not here." The insult was meant to strip Dennis of dignity. The crowd's amusement shifted into discomfort. The sport had vanished and been replaced by predatory bullying. Richtor's tone snapped into command. This man is a civilian. He's a distraction and a safety concern. His equipment isn't up to standard. Remove him from the firing line. Out of his depth and intimidated, Hayes nodded reluctantly. Sir, I have to ask you to leave the line. You can't fire today. He reached for Dennis's rifle. Dennis's thumb paused on the initials. For a moment, his gaze drifted far away, sun-bleached range dissolving into a thick triple-canopy jungle, humid and rotten with fear. A younger soldier handed the rifle to an even younger Dennis. The initials were fresh, the wood pale. Take care of her, Denny, Larry Thomas Bells had said, voice strained. She's a straight shooter. Gunfire rattled in the distance, the constant percussion of survival. Dennis had felt the rifle's weight then, not only in pounds, but in the promise that both weapon and man would return. The memory flickered and vanished. Back in the present, Dennis did not move, did not cede. He remained like a weathered boulder against which the waves of arrogance crashed and broke. On the edge of the crowd, Specialist Garcia had seen enough. He knew Dennis. The old man had given him breathing and trigger advice that tightened his groups more than a week of formal instruction. Disrespecting an old man was bad. Disrespecting a fellow shooter who knew his way around a rifle felt like sacrilege. Garcia slipped his phone out and dialed a number reserved for emergencies. Operations desk, Sergeant Miller, came the crisp reply. Sergeant, this is Specialist Garcia at the long-distance range. You need to get someone down here now. Garcia lowered his voice and explained the German's harassment of a civilian. At first, Miller sounded annoyed and told him to let the RSO handle it. But when Garcia said the name, Dennis Randall, the line went still. Miller's tone changed from irritation to a flat, cold alarm. Say that again. Dennis Randall, Garcia repeated. In the background, Miller's keyboard clicked urgently. Specialist Garcia, what is your exact location? Range 7, the 1,000-meter line. Do not engage. Do not interfere, Miller ordered. Keep eyes on Mr. Randall. Do not hang up. I'm escalating this now. Garcia didn't need to be told who upstairs meant. He could already hear muffled shouting through Miller's connection. Inside the windowless Joint Special Operations Command complex, Colonel Marcus Thorne was ending a video conference with the Pentagon when his operations sergeant burst in without knocking, a breach of protocol that chilled Thorne. Sir, we have a Spectre 1 situation. The name hit Thorne like a ghost, a legendary call sign from the unit's earliest days, used by only one man who remained alive to answer to it. Thorne was out of his chair. Range 7, civilian side. He's in a confrontation with visiting KSK. Thorne swore once and snatched the red phone. Get me General Peters, now scramble the QRF team. Tell them it's a Spectre 1 authorization. Full kit. Go, Thorne ordered. The sergeant vanished as the colonel waited for the line to connect. When the general's aide picked up, Thorne's tone was sharp, urgent. This is Colonel Thorne. I'm initiating a command override. Lock down every access road to Range 7, nothing in or out until my team arrives. And get the German liaison officer on the line. His men are about to turn a training exercise into an international scandal. He didn't wait for a reply. The phone slammed down, and Thorne was already strapping on his sidearm, striding out the door. The command center, usually calm and precise, erupted into a flurry of controlled chaos, all because of one name, Dennis Randall. Back at Range 7, Klaus and Richtor were basking in smug victory. Dennis hadn't moved. Lieutenant Hayes was seconds away from escorting him off the line. Sir, I'm asking one last time. Please leave, Hayes said, his voice strained with authority he didn't feel. Go on then, old man, Klaus sneered. Take your shot before you go. Show us the great skill of the American grandfather. He smirked at RTR, savoring the humiliation he thought he was about to witness. In his mind, this was dominance, the elite sniper putting a feeble old man in his place. He couldn't have been more mistaken. The first sign something was wrong came as a faint siren in the distance. Then another. Moments later, a plume of dust rose beyond the access road. A convoy of 3 black armored Suburbans barreled toward the range, fast, silent, and precise. They stopped hard in a formation that screamed combat discipline. The doors flew open in unison. Men spilled out, not in standard uniforms, but in full tactical gear. Their movements were smooth, predatory, lethal. Even seasoned soldiers on the line stiffened, instinctively recognizing Delta Force operators. The air seemed to crackle. The range fell utterly silent. From the lead vehicle stepped a tall, broad man in a crisp uniform, Colonel Marcus Thorne. His gaze swept the scene, over the Germans, past the lieutenant, and finally settled on the old man sitting calmly on his stool. Gravel crunched under his boots as he stopped a few feet away from Dennis Randall. Then, to the shock of everyone present, the colonel raised his hand in a salute, sharp, flawless, and filled with reverence. "Spectre 1, Thorne said, his voice clear and steady. "Sir Colonel Thorne, we were informed there was a disturbance." Dennis looked up, gave a slow nod. "Just some boys being boys, Marcus. A little loud, that's all." Thorne lowered his salute and turned. His eyes locked on Klaus and RTR, cold and cutting. "You are the KSK liaison team?" His words weren't a question, but an accusation. Yes, Colonel," Artur stammered. Thorne took a deliberate step closer as his Delta team spread out, forming a silent perimeter. "Then you will stand there and you will listen," he said, voice low and deadly calm. "You are guests of the United States Army, and on this soil you chose to mock a living legend, a man who helped create the very profession you claim to master." He pointed to Dennis. "This is Dennis Randall, call sign Spectre 1, one of the first 7 men recruited into the organization now known as 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. He's fought in 3 wars, 2 of which you'll never find in any history book. He has more confirmed long-range kills than your entire unit combined." Thorne's voice rose slightly, heavy with authority. "The rifle you dismissed as firewood was used in 1968 during a monsoon, no spotter, to neutralize 3 high-value targets at over 200 yards, saving an entire Green Beret A-team. He earned a Distinguished Service Cross for that mission, though he keeps it in a shoebox somewhere." The silence was absolute. Every man on the line hung on Thorne's words. Garcia, still clutching his phone, felt vindication surge through him. Lieutenant Hayes looked ghostly white. Klaus and Richter's faces drained of all color, their arrogance replaced by horror. They hadn't mocked a random old man. They'd mocked the very foundation of their craft. "The formulas you quote," Thorne continued, voice unyielding. "The sniper-spotter doctrine, the windage and elevation theory, you owe them to him. He helped write those manuals. He bled for them in places that don't exist on any map. You aren't worthy to carry his ammunition, let alone insult him." He stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with shame and awe. Then Thorne turned back to Dennis, his expression softening. "Sir," he said quietly, "the range is yours." "What do you need?" Dennis looked down at the single cartridge resting in his rifle, then out toward the horizon. "No, Marcus," he said evenly. "I think I'm ready for my shot now." Thorne turned to Hayes. "Range officer authorization?" Hayes snapped to attention. "Yes, sir. The line is clear. Mr. Randall is authorized to fire." The colonel faced the German snipers once more, his tone cold with disappointment. "Respect," he said, "isn't about rank, age, or equipment. It's about character, the true measure of a warrior. And today, you've proven yourselves bankrupt." He gestured to 2 operators. "Escort them to their CO." As they were led away, pale and silent, Dennis spoke, not to them, but to the still air. "Pride is a poor spotter," he said softly. "It'll make you miss the target every time." He settled behind the rifle, the worn stock fitting perfectly into his shoulder. Through the old scope, his world narrowed to a single circle of focus. The memory of a voice, Larry Thomas Bell's, echoed in his mind. "You keep it, Denny. You're better with it than I ever was. Make it count." And he had, every time, for 50 years. Dennis inhaled deeply, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle was sharp and pure, a sound of history itself. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, 500 meters away, The small orange circle vanished. A faint ping of lead on steel echoed back across the range. A perfect shot. Weeks later, the incident at Range 7 became quiet legend. The KSK team was recalled, their careers effectively ended. A formal apology arrived from the German Ministry of Defense. General Peters issued a new directive, the Randall Rule, mandatory training for all incoming personnel on honoring veterans, regardless of age or rank. Hayes was reassigned to a desk in logistics, his command career over. A month later, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Dennis sat in a small diner nursing a cup of coffee. The bell over the door jingled. Artur entered, out of uniform, subdued. He spotted Dennis, hesitated, then approached. "Mr. Randall," he said softly. "My flight home is tomorrow. I came to apologize. There is no excuse for my behavior. It was arrogant. Shameful." Dennis looked up, calm as ever. "That's the thing, son. You weren't supposed to know who I was. You were just supposed to have respect." RTOR nodded. "Yes, sir. I understand that now." He hesitated, then placed a folded piece of paper on the table. "I looked up the name on your rifle, Larry Thomas Bell. He survived, became a teacher. Passed away 2 years ago." Dennis's lips curved into a sad smile. He was a good man. Better than me. RTOR gave a small, formal bow. "Thank you for the lesson, Mr. Randall." As he turned and left into the rain, Dennis lifted his cup, his steady hands a quiet symbol of a lifetime of unspoken valor. If Dennis Randall's story moved you, like this video and subscribe to Veteran Valor for more true tales of the heroes who walk among us. Remember, legends don't always wear uniforms.